Brussels is very unique. And what really makes it different from other European or global cities is the strong focus on the EU. And indeed, the city, but also the job market as a consequence is really shaped around the EU institutions, but also the surrounding ecosystem. But there is also a little bit more.
Two Bocconi alumni at different stages of their careers working in the political capital of Europe, Brussels. One with a strong career in the private sector, the other building a career within European institutions. Brussels attracts thousands of professionals every year. But what does it really mean to work there? How important a language is? And how can you take advantage of the opportunities offered by private sectors and the European institutions? These are some of the questions you'll get answered to in The Takeoff, the podcast which shares with you stories and tips to work abroad through the real experience of Bocconi alumni. I'm Giulia Canestrelli from Bocconi Career Services, and in this episode I will take you through what it's like to work and live in Brussels via the stories of two Bocconi alumni, Anna Tacconi, Business Unit Head at Johnson & Johnson and Bocconi Alumnae Chapter Leader Brussels. Hello Anna, welcome to The Takeoff.
Thank you for having me, Giulia.
And through the fresh perspective of Annachiara Tanzarella, Economic Analyst at the European Commission. Hi Annachiara.
Hello, thank you for the invite.
Well, let's start with the introduction. Anna, would you like to introduce yourself? What is your educational path and what you do now in Brussels?
Sure. I studied at Bocconi, economics and finance precisely, and then I started my career also in finance. And over time, I eventually switched sector and I moved into healthcare, where I work today. Now I am a business unit head for Belgium and Luxembourg at Johnson & Johnson, and also have an assignment as a country project manager officer. And I am also the lead of the Bocconi alumni community in Brussels, which is a very big one as it counts for more than 2,000 alumni.
And Annachiara, would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners?
Yes, I studied at Bocconi Economics, and today I work at the European Commission in the department that works on labor market. So I do analysis of the EU labor market.
Okay, let's now go into the Brussels job market. Brussels is often described as an international, open, stimulating, but also competitive environment. Anna, based on your experience, what really makes Brussels different from other European job markets in terms of competition and opportunities?
Yeah, I think what you said, Giulia, is very true. I would also add that Brussels is very unique. And what really makes it different from other European or global cities is the strong focus on the EU. And indeed, the city, but also the job market as a consequence is really shaped around the EU institutions, but also the surrounding ecosystem. And this you can also see reflected into our alumni population, because indeed around 3/4 of our alumni are working in the European institutions. But there is also a little bit more in Brussels, because there are also many international organizations that have their European or global headquarters in the city. And for instance, I work at J&J, as you said, which is an American company, but also has very deep Belgian roots. So, as you said, this creates a very competitive environment, but also very international ones, and also very specialized one, I would say. And that makes competition not only Belgian-wide, but also European-wide. And for sure, the languages and also the EU exposure, I would say, are very, very important.
So, as you said, a lot of competition, but I think on the other hand, a lot of opportunities. Annachiara, how do you think you can take advantage of these opportunities?
I would say it's important to be curious and open-minded. Do not hesitate to reach out to people that work on something interesting that you like, to grab a coffee. Also, do not hesitate to go to events on topics that you might like, for example. So I would say be curious, be bold.
Okay, so be curious, be bold, but also networking. Annachiara, I would like to focus on you. I mean, you started your career with an internship at the European Commission, then you moved to the European Central Bank, and now you're back to the European Commission as an analyst. Could you describe your path in terms of challenges you had to face and skills you had to develop in addition to those acquired in Bocconi?
Yes. First, I would say I had to learn how to communicate the results that I was getting from my analysis. And that this is really important because if you want to convey your ideas, to convince people, you have to be clear, you have to communicate them in an easy way. And then second, I had to learn to build relationships and to trust people. Because, for example, when I wanted to go back to the Commission, I thought it was very difficult because the Commission is very big, complex. There are many different areas, many different contracts. And there it was really important to have built relationships of trust with people to then be able to ask all the questions that I wanted to really understand how to get there.
So again, networking is very important. And of course, trusting in people. Talking about the private sector instead, Anna, Brussels is also known for hybrid career paths between private and public sectors. And how common are these mixed profiles today and why are they particularly valuable in the Brussels ecosystem?
Yeah, absolutely. You're right, Giulia. Indeed, these hybrid career paths that you refer to are super common in Brussels. And there are many professionals who are moving between the private and public sector, but also across industries. For instance, I mentioned already that I moved from finance to healthcare. So this is really something that is valuable in Brussels because you have this mix of policy, regulation and industry, which is really very much interconnected. And I would say that employers are really valuing people who can understand how the EU institutions work, how the regulatory decisions are made, and also how those are translated into industries and sectors in practice.
So you've talked about employers wanting someone that can understand European regulations. But on the contrary, how do NGOs, corporates, etc., how are they shaping the Brussels job market?
Yes, indeed. We discussed a lot today about EU institutions, and they're clearly the anchor in Brussels, the center of everything. But on the other hand, as you said, there are a lot of international organizations and NGOs and startups that are forming really a broader ecosystem, and they do make Brussels a very dynamic labor market and not just an administrative capital. And I would give you the example of healthcare because it's closer to me. But for instance, when I arrived to Brussels, I was very surprised to see that healthcare is really super strong in Belgium, and particularly the pharma industry is representing over 20% of the total industrial activity in Belgium. So it's definitely the largest industrial sector in Belgium, as there are a lot of life sciences and healthcare multinational over there. Clearly interconnected to the EU policies as well. But then, quite surprisingly, I would also say that startups and tech are increasingly important in Brussels. Clearly, we are not as far as Berlin is, for instance, but for sure there are strong clusters in startups and scale-ups as well, and particularly in this policy adjacent tech, digital health, or regulatory driven innovation. So yeah, indeed, I would say that this sector are really creating a dynamic market in Brussels, and employers are very much valuing professionals that can move from a place to the other and from a sector to the other.
So flexibility is the key.
Absolutely.
And Annachiara, the conversation was really interesting. I would like to conclude with a quick fire round questions. Ready?
Yes.
So first of all, is Brussels more about specialization or flexibility?
I would say both, because we discussed today that deep expertise is very important, but also the ability to move between sectors and between context and industries.
I would say flexibility because there are so many opportunities and it's important to be open to move across them.
And one language to study and to invest in besides English?
Yeah, I think French is very useful, not necessarily for work itself, or at least not all the time, but for sure it's useful for your private life in the city.
I would say Italian, because there are many Italians in Brussels and it's important to connect.
Wow, so two different perspectives. And last question, I would ask you to give us one suggestion, one piece of advice you would give to your younger self or to students aiming at work in Brussels.
Yeah, I would give two, if that's okay. The first one is to stay open and stay flexible. The second one, and maybe I'm a bit biased here, but I would say also join the Brussels alumni community events from the very beginning.
I would say believe in your dreams, even if they are big. Be bold and work hard.
Wow, thank you, Annachiara. This conversation has been really enlightening. It was a real pleasure having you at the Takeoff, Tales and Tips to Work Abroad by Bocconi Career Services to share your stories and help our listeners plan their careers.
Let us know if you're in Brussels.
Yes, we can't wait to see you in Brussels.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In this episode, we've learned that Brussels is not only about European institutions, but also private sector and NGOs. All these sectors are deeply interconnected, so stay open to different opportunities. The Takeoff is available on all major podcast platforms. Join me for the next episode where I will take you on a journey to discover what it's like to work and live abroad with our Bocconi alumni. I am Giulia Canestrelli from Bocconi Career Services. Thank you for listening.